And we're continuing with Chapter 12 of the third part of Silver on the Tree by Susan Cooper. This part of the book is called The Lost Land. The chapter is called The Journey. I apologize for how long this pause was. Hopefully you're listening to it at a point where you don't even know that it happened. So Gwion has told Will and Bran that they must travel to the castle. They were halfway down the curving staircase. Gwion opened a door in the wall that Will had not noticed before. He led them down a different stair, straight and shallower, in toward the center of the palace. And all at once they heard a faint murmur of voices ahead and found themselves in a long wood-paneled room with books and bookshelves and heavy tables. It was a long gallery, the room like a library. It was the long gallery, the room like a library. Will's eyes went to the side wall and saw that there still was the darkness, empty space with no light or shadow visible, the great theater in which all life must be played. Other things, though, were not the same as before. People crowded the room now, filling it with a warm buzz of conversation, and any who glanced up at the three of them, standing in the doorway, smiled or raised a hand in greeting. They walked through, up and down, over the strangely differing levels of its floor. Many people they passed spoke a word or two to Gwion, and the warmth was clear in every face that looked at Will and Bran. One woman touched Will gently on the shoulder as they went by and said, "Safe journey to you." As he looked up startled, he heard a man beside them softly say, "Pabhul." Bran said in his ear, "Good luck," he said. "How do they all know?" Will shook his head, wondering. They followed Gwion's neat, dark-clad figure down the room, walking quietly, and then, at the far end, a man who had been standing bent over. A large book on a table straightened and turned as they approached, putting out a hand to halt them. Will thought he remembered the face as that of a man to whom he had spoken when they had first been in the room, a man who had not seemed to see or hear him, and who had been reading a book whose pages were blank. "See before you," the man said, with the lilt of a North Wales stronger in his voice than Will had heard from Gwion or even Bran. "There is a part of this book that you must see and remember." "Remember?" said Gwion softly, looking at them, and the echo woke in both their minds. The book lay open before them on the heavy oak table. On one curving vellum page was a painting, and on the other a single line of words. Will was staring at the picture. In a stylized green world of trees and lawns, among beds of roses bright as those where they had encountered the rider, it showed the figure of a young woman, fair-haired, robed in blue, standing looking out at them. Her face was heart-shaped, fine-boned, delicately beautiful. She was serious, neither smiling nor sad. "It is the lady," Will said. Bran said in surprise. "But you said she was very old," he reflected for a moment. "Of course, that just depends, doesn't it?" "It is the lady," Will said again slowly. "There's that big rose-colored ring on her finger, too. I've never seen her without it, and look, there, in the picture behind her, isn't that the fountain?" Bran peered closer, looking over his glasses. "It's the same fountain, the one we were at in the park. So that must be the same rose garden, but how?" Will had his finger on the line of the thick black manuscript on the facing page. He read aloud. "I am the queen of every hive. Remember," the man said, and closed the book. "Remember," Gwion said, "and then go." Facing them, he put one hand briefly on the shoulder of each and looked carefully into their eyes. "Do you know this place? The gallery we are in? Of course, you will remember the way by which you came into it. That you must follow now. I stay here for a while. There are men and women of some art in this place, and they will tell me what they can of Merriman. I will be with you again, but you must go now, at once." Will looked down and found the square open trapdoor in the floor, and the ladder leading down beneath. "That way, Gwion said. "And then take what you will find, and the finding will start you on your way." The strong, gray-bearded face broke into its warm, illuminating smile. Go well, my friends." Down into the shadows Bran and Will clambered, more confident than when they had scrambled up the ladder in the early morning. Linked by the little horn that hung forgotten again now from Will's belt, on level ground once more they groped their way forward in the murk and came to the small wooden door. Will felt its pitted surface with the flat of his hands. No handle or anything on this side either. It opened outward, didn't it? Perhaps you just push. And at the first gentle pressure, the door did swing outward, so that they stood blinking for a moment in the light of the street outside. Then they went out, the door swinging shut behind them, with a crash that showed it would not open so easily again. And there in the narrow shady street, waiting for them, were the two white-maned golden horses they had ridden there so long and so short a time ago. The horses tossed their heads, as if in greeting. The silver harness rang like sleigh bells. Without a word, Will and Bran swung themselves up into the saddles, with the same unaccountable ease as before, and the horses trotted away up the narrow street. Between the high grey walls and the thin, bright strip of blue sky far above, they came out into a broader place filled with people who seemed at once to recognize them, who stood waving, calling out in greeting. The horses walked carefully through the crowd. The calling grew into a spasmodic cheering. Children ran alongside them, laughing and hallooing. Bran and Will grinned at one another in pleased embarrassment. On they went down the broad paved street until they reached a towering wall with a great gateway in it through which the road ran. Through the arch they could see a glimpse of green fields and distant trees. The crowd stood thick before the arch, but the golden horses were stepping on, never pausing, nudging their way gently through. "Good fortune to you, safe traveling, a good journey." All around, the people of the city called and waved. Children ran and danced and shouted. A group of girls beside the gate stood laughing and throwing flowers. Will put up his hand, half in self-defense, and caught a wide red nose looking down. He saw the dark-haired girl and saw a wide red rose looking down. He saw the dark-haired girl who had thrown it, blushing and smiling. He grinned at her and stuck the flower into his top pocket. Then all at once they were outside the great gate of the city, and all the crowd was gone. Before them lay broad green fields, and a rough sandy road stretching brown gold into the distance, with a wood beyond. The voices from the city died away. Somewhere a lark sang in the summer sky, a blue sky patched here and there with puffy fair-weather clouds. The sun high amongst them now. The horses turned up the sandy road and went on without breaking step at a steady walk. Bran eyed the flower in Will's pocket. "Ooh," he said in a mocking falsetto. "A red rose, is it?" Will said amiably, "Get lost." "Not so pretty as Jane, the one who threw it." "As who?" Will said. "Jane Drew. Don't you think she's pretty, then?" "I suppose so, yes," Will said, surprised. "I never thought about it." Bran said, "One good thing about you, you're uncomplicated." But Will's mind had jumped backwards. He wound the loose rein thoughtfully round one finger as he swayed steadily to and fro on the tall horse. "I hope they're all right, back there," Bran said roughly, abruptly. "Better forget them for now." Will looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Without speaking, Bran pointed out to one side past him in the distance across the flat green fields. Will saw a patch of black and white moving fast in a direction parallel to the road along which they were traveling. He knew it could only be the riders of the dark heading like themselves for the castle of the lost land. And that is the end of chapter 12.